Boom, we're live. Welcome to episode 4 of the Crush Fantasy Football podcast with your hosts Dolan and James. Episode 4, as always, is sponsored by Soiree Season. If you're tired of the usual registry items and you want to change it up, check out Soiree Season. One of these episodes will start linking that in the show notes. Dolan, happy Sunday. What's up?
Happy Sunday. Only a few more Sundays left. What do we got? Like
Till football?
6 or so Sundays left until we got some of the best Sundays possible in our life again. Yeah, I'm ready for the best of Sundays coming soon. We're at the heart of summer, so it just means we're getting closer and closer. Draft season is right around the corner for fantasy football leagues, and the real deal is not far away. How are you doing?
Scott Hansen said 50 days till red zone, I think. So that's
50.
how close
That's a
we are
good
to
number.
Sunday. I'm all right. Besides taking a motorcycle during my triathlon, it was a good week and weekend. So no
And I
complaints
will
here.
say
Quick aside on
for the fans
hit me.
out there, the motorcycle was not voluntary. That was not James quitting. That was a pure equipment malfunction on the side of his bicycle.
If I quit during that, I wouldn't be able to do episode 4. I wouldn't show my face on YouTube. Just quick thing on triathlons though, because I've been thinking about it. And so, you know how in planes where everyone always says flying today is the same as flying in whatever, 1980? Like there's been no innovation in planes. So the swimming portion of triathlons is the same way. It's as barbaric as you can imagine. All these, you cram a bunch of people like sardines into this little start line, and then you say go, and everybody just runs into each other. You're getting kicked in the face, you're getting hit in the face, you're bumping into each other, and you can't swim normally. And I don't know. I think there's a better way to do it. I don't know what the better way is, but it amazes me the lack of innovation in the swimming portion of triathlons.
Were you more of a kicker or a kicky?
Kicky, bro, I'm careful. I'm not used to this enough to throw anybody. I don't know who's training for the Olympics. I'm just out there trying to do my job and stay in my lane and not. And this chick was backstroking too, but yeah. So tirade over. I've just been thinking about it. I'm like, come on, we can stagger or do something. So as always, we're gonna start the show, get our hot takes out of the way. Dolan will start first with the non-football hot take, and I'll give us some what you came here for, some football.
Yeah, I so was with our dear buddy Jake, and we were talking about this yesterday. And I was like, "Oh, this is perfect." I was thinking of what to think of for the show yesterday, but we were talking about food, surprisingly enough, and we were talking about sauces. And I think my hot take is that Chick-fil-A sauce is surprisingly underwhelming for how much hype it gets. Like, it's a very plain sauce.
Wow.
It's very regular. It's fine. I'm not gonna like throw up if I eat a French fry that's covered in Chick-fil-A sauce, but I do not understand why everybody acts like it is God's greatest gift to the condiment world. Chick-fil-A in general, fantastic. I absolutely love the chicken, absolutely love the fries. The rest of the food is awesome. I just don't really see the hype behind the sauce.
All right, I have a couple things to add here. First off, agree. Polynesian sauce is Chick-fil-A's
Yep,
best
number
sauce.
one. Number
That
one on
which
the
is
list.
agreed. Chick-fil-A sauce is still good, so you're wrong there. It's the calorie to goodness ratio that's bad. So for
Mm.
how bad it is for you, and the fat, the calories in Chick-fil-A sauce, it needs to be better. So I'm with you. You probably shouldn't eat it. My hot take, so my football hot take, this one's pretty timely. Garrett Wilson. So Garrett Wilson just got this massive 4-year, $130 million, $90 million guaranteed contract, and from Reddit, right? Quotes. Terry McLaurin arc locked in, except he actually got paid. Mediocre QBs for the rest of his career. As a Garrett Wilson owner, I hate this. Lol. Poor guy has Stockholm syndrome. So that's the reaction. And my hot take is that shouldn't be the reaction. I think between Justin Fields funneling him targets for 2 years, plus how quickly things change and how in Dynasty you need to buy into talent, I'm actually okay with this contract. I think it's not a death sentence as what I just read you would tell you.
Yeah, I agree with the take of the contract not being a death sentence. I agree dynasty changes. I've always been a little lower on Garrett Wilson than consensus. He's never done it to me compared to the other guys that you have to draft him around. I find myself always going in other directions. But I think situation wise, like he does have the advantage
Yeah.
of right now, like there is next to zero legitimate target competition next to him. Who knows what the Jets are going to look like next year, whether that's with Fields or, that experiment doesn't go well and they got someone else. Like, I very much agree with the take that the contract is not in any way, shape, or form a death sentence, but it's not a pro either in the sense that I'm now all of a sudden going to bump Garrett Wilson up my rankings and find myself in a position where I'll be drafting much of him.
Yep, agreed. It's not like he was going to go to the Chiefs, probably, and so I don't know. I don't think it's the end. Okay, so what we're going to do this show in episode 4 is we're going to go through a couple of offenses we're buying into this year, who are going to be the high flying, high scoring for fantasy and for kind of normal NFL football that we're going to want a part of. Dolan, we'll kick it off to you. Any context in that? Basically, the Eagles last year, right? What offenses have a chance to either be great or be better than people think?
Yeah, no, I think you summed it up well. I definitely took a little more of the better than people think rationale with this one. I'd say my first one is a bit of an exception to that. I went most expensive to least expensive for the three offenses I picked. And so, with nothing else to add, I can go ahead and kick this off. And this first one I'll keep a little brief just because it is a continuation of my hot take last week. But I think that even as expensive as they are, the Lions are still the offense that I want to shop at if I'm trying to buy designer brand. Like if I'm willing to pay the price, if I'm willing to use early draft capital, I have no problem investing big in, the Gibbses, the St. Browns, Jameson Williams, Sam Laporta, if you want to go early tight end, so on and so forth. All of these guys really excite me. If you want a later round QB, I touched on how I think because all of those guys are going to be successful, Goff's going to be a great late round target there as well. And I just, is that offense going to lead the league in points scored again? Maybe. I think they're about as good a shot as anyone to finish at least as a top 3 to 5 offense, even if there is a tiny bit of aggression. They can go from scoring, what was it, around 33, 34 points a game. Even if they're a hair under 30, that's still more than enough to support tons and tons of high-level fantasy assets. So I love the Lions offense this year, even with the big price tag that comes next to all their players.
So I hear you, and I'm going to disagree. 33 point whatever points per game. So the best in probably 6 years since 2019. I think that's just natural regression coming, right? Everything, at least from a health standpoint, right? Everything worked out, maybe besides Demont, worked out for that offense last year. I feel like it's really hard to repeat that number. Actually, it's probably impossible to repeat that number, but even above kind of 30, 29 points a game, I think it's pretty hard to repeat. They obviously lost Ben Johnson. They actually lost a ton of coaches, right? They lost their offensive game coordinator. They lost Ben Johnson, and they're going to have a good defense. I think PFF had all 3 of their position groups on defense in the top 10, so they're getting a lot of those guys back that they didn't have last year. And so I think there's a real good chance they're not going to have to score as much. It's going to be harder for them to score as much, and then just everything breaking right won't kind of look the exact same. I'm not saying complete fade because I love Gibbs and I'd easily take him in the top 5 in redraft. I love Amon-Ra. I think Goff's going to regress. I think we hit that a little bit on last week, at least from touchdowns. But yeah, I'm not there as they're going to repeat as the best offense.
Yeah. And I think I don't disagree with everything you're saying. I do think the Ben Johnson departure is probably somewhat overblown, though. I do think, Dan Campbell does have a huge, huge role in what that offense looks like. And one thing that I actually really noticed, and actually look on the numbers to confirm this, as an Eagles fan, we went through a similar experience 2 years ago when Shane Steichen left. There was an internal promotion of Brian Johnson, did not go well, but when you look back at the fantasy numbers, everybody still wanted A.J. Brown. Devontae Smith still had a great year. Obviously, Jalen Hurts was still Jalen Hurts. DeAndre Swift, went from being an afterthought at running back to being, I think a solid RB2, if not like borderline RB1. So I do think that happens. And I think one of the areas in particular that I really noticed this is Johnson for the Eagles was a first-time play caller, and the Lions are running into a similar situation this year. And I think one of the things I notice about first-time play callers is there's a lot less bells and whistles. Whereas Ben Johnson would randomly throw a touchdown to the 6th offensive lineman on the field. I think those things are going to go away a fair amount, and you're just going to feel the offense be a little more star reliant than scheme reliant, which to me means the players themselves are not going to experience too much of a drop off, even if the offense as a whole is obtaining less yards and scoring less points.
Yeah, that could even mean better things for, or as good for Amon Ra and Gibbs, right? The two
Mm-hmm.
guys, if they funnel, if they get a little less creative. Yeah, I mean the same thing happened with the Bucks last year. Everyone thought, oh, Dave Canales left, he made Baker, and then Liam Cohen came in and kind of did like one
Mm-hmm.
upped him almost, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, okay, I'll start with my first offense to buy. I think this is low hanging fruit, to be honest. The Dallas Cowboys. This Dallas Cowboys offense, so understand, different play caller, but the quarterback and the primary weapon are the same. They scored 30 points per game 2 years ago in 2023. They ran over 1,100 plays. Dak finished as a top 10 QB, right? QB3 in fantasy points in 2023. Even Brian Schottenheimer, when he called plays in 2020 for the Seahawks, top 10 in points per game at 29 points per game. Last year, they couldn't convert in the red zone, right? So there's meat on the bone there. And besides the running backs, so let's say running backs aside, I think Dak and those two receivers, CD is going to be awesome this year. I'd take him anywhere in the top five, even number one overall. And I think Pickens is one of the best values out there in fantasy football. And so I think the Cowboys offense, if Dak stays healthy, is back to last year. What
Yeah,
do you
as
think?
an Eagles fan, I hate to admit it, but I really could not agree more with this one. I too am pretty scared of the running back room. I think the most likely scenario there is it's just going to be kind of a gross committee. I know a lot of people think, one guy's going to emerge, take a shot late in drafts on one of them. I think they're just all going to see snaps, but none of them are going to see more than like 50%. And it's just going to feel pretty gross unless, somehow Jaden Blue winds up in a true pass catching role and sees 100 targets this year or something crazy. But I love Dak at price for fantasy football. CD, like you said, he's awesome. You're not getting any sort of a discount on that caliber of player, but I really think George Pickens is in for an absolutely monstrous year this year. I think he's the perfect addition to that offense and is really, really, really going to tie everything together. Jake Ferguson at his price is interesting as just like a complete late round tight end. Draft him as your tight end too, because Dak still loves throwing at the tight end. It'll be interesting to see how the target share shakes out between him and Pickens. But overall, I too am very bullish on the passing game in Dallas this year, except for when they're playing the Eagles, of
Yeah,
course.
and let's not forget Brandon Aubrey, right? There's points to go around there.
For everybody who still has
Yeah, the
kickers in
run.
their league, yeah, they got K1 out there.
Let's double click on the running back thing because I think the running back's interesting. I think it's most likely a gross mismatch of all three of them. Let's throw Miles Sanders in there, but I think you're in redraft. You're not paying anything to acquire them. You might as well get Miles Sanders. I think he's the cheapest right now.
Mm-hmm.
um, on your bench because it's so unknown how this thing's going to shake out. And I think there's a world where it's okay. Someone's like Jaden Blue's not ready, and then Javante's either washed or tweaked something, and then you're looking at a RB fill in for the whole year, right? If he plays well. And so I think there's the since the price is so cheap, I think that is a dart that you throw. That's not even like a middle round. That's like a end of the draft, the last guy.
Yeah, I'm very okay with of those three. I agree with that sentiment. I think Sanders is the one because of how cheap he is that you take a flyer on, and you kind of know probably within the first week or two, oh, he played 8% of their snaps. I can cut this guy, and boom, you move on.
Yeah. All right, you want to hit us with Go Pack Go?
Yeah, spoiler alert. The Packers are my number two offense on this list. And I think where I came out with them is of all the offenses that are kind of in the good but not elite tier, I think they have the most potential to just jump into the we are an absolute juggernaut tier. I think one, Jordan Love is continuing to get better, and I do think he was dealing with an ankle injury for most of the last year that I think hasn't gotten talked about quite enough yet. So I think his performance, both from an individual fantasy performance perspective and an overall team output perspective, I'm fully expecting a step forward this year. And then obviously they made a pretty big investment in the draft, bringing in Matthew Golden, who we will see how impactful from a pure statistics perspective Golden is. But I do think from a how he fits in the offense perspective, he is the exact type of piece that they were missing. I think, he'll give them exactly what they wanted to get out of Christian Watson, where that experiment hasn't really gone super well throughout Watson's career so far. But overall, I think that this is just an offense that when you look across the board, they don't have that superstar receiver, but they are extremely deep at receiver. They have a very good running back in Josh Jacobs. They have, I think, two really good tight ends, solid offensive line, and one of the best coaches in the game when it comes to drawing up the schemes and calling the plays. And so, of these names in particular, Love right now in Dynasty ADP is going right around QB 13. I think that's a fantastic, fantastic buy, whether you want to tear down from one of those guys in the lower tier, or if you're looking to get that more solidified QB2 who can become a QB1. I think paying to vault up from there. Either way, I think he makes for a fantastic target. And then I think on the similar end of the spectrum, Josh Jacobs is right in that running back 12 range. And I think he is the absolute perfect addition. If you're like, hey, I'm not going to draft, an RB1 early in my startup draft, I'm going to wait a couple rounds. Like have total confidence in Jacobs being my RB1. If you're, a dynasty manager who needs Jacobs and, maybe he's on a team that's looking to move towards a rebuild, I would happily give up a first to get him. And then I think outside of the first three tight ends really, but you can stretch it to, 4 or 5, depending on how you're looking at it. I love him as hey, I'm going to be one of the last guys to draft a tight end in redraft. He's a cheap acquisition to make in Dynasty. And it would not be surprising if he's one of the guys who just because this offense booms and because he's such a talented player, finishes the season with double-digit touchdowns, and we look up and it's like, wow, this guy was the tight end 5. So I went in a lot of different directions there. I think there are a lot of names that could pop off in this offense at a lot of different price tags, but I think those three in particular are the ones that really jump out to me.
I'm with you. And the Packers offense is going to be good. They were good last year, and they had the whole Malik Willis experience for 2 weeks, right? I think they're 8th in points per game last year. The interesting thing to me is we're on year 4 of not knowing who to draft in the pass catcher group here. I think Golden makes that even more unknown, right? Especially kind of where they took him. And so I have no sense still, right? Obviously, we're avoiding Christian Watson this year. I think we think Jordan Love's going to be a lot better, that more of the touchdowns are going to come through the air than on the ground. And we can talk Jacobs in a second. But how do you look at the Golden, Wicks, Jaden Reed, Tucker Kraft foursome as are they all just 8th round dart throws and we'll see what happens? Or is there anything we can go on from the past to give us an angle here?
So I think when honing in on the receivers specifically, who I haven't touched on as much, looking at their ADP in dynasty circles, and this is according to Fantasy Pros, Jaden Reed is at 42, Matthew Golden not far behind at 45, Romeo Doubs at 63, Watson down at 76, Wicks all the way down at 78. I actually really like Jaden Reed at his price point. Not because I think he's going to necessarily be a better receiver than Matthew Golden, but I think his upside is so much higher. And I think that's all because of the film. When you go back and watch some of the Packers games, especially the games where he was heavily involved, he just is an explosive home run athlete. And I think because of Golden's addition to this offense, he'll be able to open up a lot more for Reed. And I could very well see Reed being that player where it's we look up and he has a peak Deebo Samuel type season. Probably not the wide receiver 2 like Deebo was a couple years ago, but it's out of nowhere this guy has 450-yard touchdowns on the season. He's getting handoffs. He's catching the ball in the backfield. He's catching swings and getting in space in that same style of offense that Deebo really thrived in. I really like Reed at cost. I think everybody else, they do spread the targets around a lot. So I don't think he's going to be a target monster, but I don't think anybody in this offense is. And so when that's the case, give me the guy with the big play potential.
Yep. The only hesitation I have on that one is why didn't it happen last year, right? And I know we can say the Jordan Love injury, but I think everyone, especially the dynasty community, was very high on him. We were expecting it last year. It didn't really happen, is why he's even in this tier we're talking about. And so I think maybe just Golden because it's unknown. That's probably wrong, and there's probably a reason it didn't happen last year. I just don't know the reason. And so, yeah, I guess we'll see. The only other Packers question I had for you is Josh Jacobs scored 15 rushing touchdowns last year. Is that repeatable, or is that a number that's coming down in 2025?
Yeah, circling back to Reed real quick, I think it's less so, hey, he didn't do something next year. It's more just, hey, he's still entering just his 3rd season. A breakout for a year 3 player isn't that uncommon. And, I think, again, I buy into the offense. And it's not like the film was awful last year and he was, wide receiver 80. He still performed relatively well. As for Jacobs, I absolutely think that, he can be a touchdown machine. Banking on 15 is obviously a bit of a lofty projection. But if I'm
Yeah,
betting on this offense as a whole, like I don't think they're going to be a team who gets down to the 5, 10 yard line and says, all of a sudden we're just going to become super, super pass happy. I think they're very much going to
yep,
be a run centric offense still. And then the passing game is built off of that, the way it is in like every Shanahan style system, which LaFleur
gotcha.
operates within. So I think he can absolutely get a ton of touchdowns. I don't think he's going to get quite the volume of work overall that he did last year. And I would still probably bank on a slightly worse season just due to normal regression. But I don't think the pendulum's going to swing so far where when you look at him at a running back 12 price tag in Dynasty, you're like, dang, I can't believe I gave up a first round pick for this guy, barring an injury.
Yep, I'm with you. He's awesome. No one behind him scares me. So, yep. All right, my next team. So, I think an awesome offense that I love every single part of this year is the Minnesota Vikings. I don't think that's a shocking thing. I think there's a, let's
We
call it
love the
agreement.
NFC North.
Wow. Think, should we cancel the Bears, cross the Bears off the list now?
They weren't on mine, luckily, but yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just now realizing how heavy we are in
No,
the
me neither.
Wonderlic league.
I didn't realize it either. Basically, this is a bet on JJ McCarthy. I think he's going to be awesome. I think he's a smart, really good player who has a year under his belt to learn how to be an NFL quarterback. He obviously has the best kind of quarterback, no, maybe not the best, but he's the guy of quarterback gurus that you want. Vegas has a pretty high over under on his passing yards. I think there's good signs all around. The weapons are awesome. Hawk missed half the year last year. They bring in Jordan Mason. So I think this is going to be an awesome offense. No more analysis than I think JJ McCarthy is going to be good. You agree?
I partially agree. I agree with the fact that JJ McCarthy is going to be good. What scares me about banking on fantasy production from this offense is the
Mm,
volume. I do worry a little bit that at least as a rookie, if we're making a long-term bet, totally different story. I worry that a lot of the
yeah.
knocks from him coming out of Michigan are going to manifest in Minnesota as well. I think there's a very real chance, especially with the huge investments that the Vikings made in the offensive line this offseason, plus bringing in Jordan Mason. They are just like, hey, we want to run the ball first and foremost. We're going to do what we can to
Yep.
make life as easy as possible for JJ McCarthy, who, I'm still viewing as a rookie from an expectations perspective. I
Yep.
worry that the volume of the offense is going to be there enough to support multiple fantasy assets. I do think
Yep.
they will run an efficient, effective offense when it comes to winning football games. I do have a lot of
Yeah.
questions about whether or not it'll translate to fantasy, though.
Yeah. Actually, this might be a little counterintuitive. I like JJ McCarthy. I think JJ McCarthy is going to be a good fantasy pick at cost because I think he's going to run a little bit. I do worry that him spreading it around, mixed with what you said, kind of the pace and the run first, could impact probably not Jefferson, but the combination of Addison and Hawkinson and Aaron Jones. I think they might suffer a little. And of the six studs, maybe seven if we include CMC, Jefferson is probably my least favorite of those six in redraft. But yeah, I think JJ will keep his fantasy value because I think he's gonna run more than people think.
Yeah, and I still really like JJ because I like the talent, because I do think that ecosystem is pretty well locked up from a dynasty perspective. I would just be a little
Yeah.
surprised if, he comes out of the gates just guns blazing. The one thing I will say though is, I poured a little bit of cold water on that. I think I really, really do like the value we're getting with the running backs here. In
Yeah.
Dynasty, Aaron Jones is the RB 31, Jordan Mason the RB 41. Like, I'm all over Jordan Mason this year. Like, I think there's a world where he
Yep.
ends up being the Demont to Aaron Jones's Jahmyr Gibbs in what could be, again, a very run heavy offense. I think that, Aaron Jones misses 4 to 6 games every year anyway. If he gives nothing more than that many games as the starter, I mean, he's proven that he can dominate in that role, and the ecosystem again is going to be great around him. So I actually really love
Yep.
both of those guys. If you're trying to build out a dynasty team, you're like, hey, I need one more running back. These are guys that are in that affordable tier that you could either buy individually or as a package, and I think walk away happy with your investment.
You're just messing with me because I gave away Jordan Mason, right?
Yeah, that's my whole
Yeah.
ration.
It led to
Purely
Brian
trolling.
Thomas. It led to Brian Thomas. Yeah. I don't know. Do you have the number? I don't have the Jordan Mason redraft number in front of me, but agree. I think if it's in the double digit rounds, I think it's a no brainer because he's going to run goal line for him, and I think we both think the offense is going to move the ball a little. All
Hmm.
right. Anything on the Vikings, or you want to get to our
No,
last one?
I think I hit it. So
Let's do it.
I can close us out here. And this is I think my first two were a little more expensive offenses, obviously with the Lions being a prime example of this, but this is where we're going from, eating caviar to eating, some fast food burgers here is I
Chick
really
fil A sauce.
just
Chick fil
Chick-fil-A
A
sauce.
sauce.
Exactly. This might even be less than Chick-fil-A prices. This might be something cheaper than that. But I think this is more of a philosophical perspective than anything, but I love Drake May, as does, seemingly everybody in both the dynasty and redraft community right now. What I don't understand is why, if people are this high on Drake May, nobody wants anything to do with his weapons, with I think Travion Henderson being an exception to that because he's a rookie, highly drafted running back. But when you look at, their receivers and tight ends, Stephon Diggs is the highest ranked receiver in Dynasty at wide receiver 56. Kyle Williams, their rookie, is a third round rookie, is at 64. Demario Douglas down at 74. And then Kayshon Boutte is all the way down at wide receiver 109. At tight end, Hunter Henry is all the way down at tight end 22. Now, granted, none of those names sound super appealing, but similar to the discussion we were having about the Cowboys running backs and Miles Sanders earlier, if Drake May is good, one of these guys is going to provide value. I think, obviously there's a chance Diggs recovers well from his injury, regains his form, and probably isn't the, top five wide receiver he was during his peak Bills era, but it wouldn't surprise me one bit if he's, the wide receiver 15 to 20 going at wide receiver 56 prices this year. Williams, he's a rookie. Who knows? Not a bad pick in your third or so round of your rookie drafts. Demario Douglas, I've never been a huge fan of, but I actually really like, Kayshon Boutte as a flyer. Again, similar to what we were talking about with the Dallas running backs. Draft him, send a fourth round pick him up off your waiver wire, whatever you have to do, and see, hey, maybe he's the wide receiver two this season. He was their most explosive receiver last year, if nothing else. So why not take a shot at it? See, again, maybe he plays 15 snaps in week one, and then okay, this guy's actually not as big of a role as I thought he was going to have, and then you move on. But someone, if Drake May is going to be good from that receiver room, is going to return value. Maybe they're not going to be an elite option, but I'm pretty confident one, if not more, of these guys are going to return value at cost. And then I think if you really want to punt tight end, Hunter Henry is the perfect example
Yep.
of that. Like there's a world where we walk away from this season and he's just Drake May's favorite target and he has 12 touchdowns. He's not going to be a huge yak guy. He's not going to be the most efficient person on the world, but he might catch a lot of third downs, and fall in the end zone, double digit times and just be fantastic. If you're a believer in this offense, I think you have to be a believer in the pass catchers more than the market is right now.
Yep. It's a really hard team to handicap, to be honest, because on one, I'm like you. I was like, Drake May is going to be good. That means someone has to benefit, right? But I can't get there. Like I just, you went through the guys, and I don't feel as good about any of them. Let's say minus Travion. The receivers, I wouldn't touch Diggs with a 10-foot pole in either format, right? I just think the off the field stuff, the where he is in his career, it's hard to guess his priorities, right? He's not for me. It grosses me out. I want no part of Stephon Diggs. And then so it's a rookie, and then it's Kayshon Boutte, right? He could get there. And then Hunter Henry, I agree with your analysis of late round dart throw. He could score double digit touchdowns, which leaves, I think Travion Henderson is the one that is probably drafted around too low because he's the only true weapon in that offense. And then I think Drake May, a little like JJ McCarthy, I think he's going to get there from a fantasy perspective with his legs. He'll run enough that even if the weapons aren't great, even if they 1 week it's Hunter Henry, 1 week it's Ramondre, 1 week it's Travion, I think Drake May will be consistent enough as a late round QB with the legs. And so I like that buy-in. And then I think the last thing is the defense is going to be good. And so they're not going to have to score that many points. It's going to be a low scoring, plotting team is where I landed. And I really tried to like them just because I like Drake May. But yeah, I'm not as optimistic as you, to be honest, with the Pats.
Yeah, and to be clear, I'm not putting them in the Packers category of like, hey, this is going to be an offense that
Yeah,
at come the end of the season, we're looking back and they're a top five, probably even top 10 unit. It is more just about the cost that's associated with it. You can get so many of these guys late in drafts are basically free that just from a structural perspective, I'm willing to bet that someone's going to emerge. And I will gladly roll the dice on that as a, pseudo bet on Drake May because his price tag alone is, pretty expensive. I think he is the guy who, if I wanted to make a big bet in Dynasty and say, I'm betting on a pricey quarterback who hasn't broken out yet. He's my guy. Like obviously, Jaden Daniels is also a sophomore, but his price tag is untouchable. Drake Mays is probably pretty close to it, but if you're willing to overpay and can get him, that's the kind of guy I would bet on. And so I think
yeah,
you're betting on that because of what he can do for the entire team, and so we'll see if it works out. But I think someone's going to emerge. It's going to be this time next year, we're looking back and we're like, how the hell did blank, Kayshon Boutte, whoever it is, have
yeah,
a top 15 season? And it's just going to be like,
yeah.
oh, well, I guess, yeah, Drake May's awesome.
Yep, I can get on board with you there. JJ McCarthy or Drake May for 2025. Just redraft 1 year. Who you like better this year?
I'm still going May. I think he's more likely to rush the ball more. I think we did see more on tape. I think he's more so the centerpiece of that offense relative to what there is in Minnesota. And again, I like the talent more. I think there's a reason he was drafted third
Yeah.
and McCarthy was what 13th, whatever it was. Um,
Eighth.
so yeah, I'm still Team May, but I think at cost he was eighth. Oh, right, it was Bo who was a little later. But
Right.
yeah, I no, Penix was eighth. Penix was eighth.
I'm thinking
I'm talking
Dynasty
NFL
pick
draft.
eighth. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
10th.
I'm talking
10th,
NFL draft.
right?
Yeah.
10th.
So, but regardless, yeah, I think by the slimmest of margins, I'm taking May.
We might have a bet cooking up. I don't have the terms in my mind yet, but I think we might have. I think I'm ready to take the other side of that. Yeah, maybe Ramondre can fall into 10 touchdowns. We'll see. Dolan, episode 4, fantasy.
We did it.
Crush
We did
fantasy
it. Any
football.
any honorable mentions or last thoughts before we hop off here? I am all good on my end.
Yeah, my honorable mention is the running part of triathlons absolutely sucks too after the bike. It's just like your legs aren't the same. It's not normal running. It's a whole different activity. It's jello legs, and so yeah, we're gonna take a little break from those.
Thanks everybody for listening. We'll catch you later this week.